Hello and welcome to a brand new episode of IEEE Pune's podcast Beyond Conversations. On this episode, our guest is Siddhi Hande. Siddhi completed her bachelor's in computer science engineering from PICT Pune and went on to pursue a master's in engineering from the prestigious Cornell University in the USA. She currently works as a data engineer at Infraclear based out of Ithaca, New York. On this episode, we talk about her master's journey, discussing what constitutes a great master's application, GRE scores, SOPs, building relevant projects, and finding unique internship opportunities, and what she believes to be an X factor to her getting an admit to Cornell's extremely competitive CS program. How would you introduce yourself in your own words?
Um, so I'd say my name is Siddhi Hande and I'm a data engineer currently. I got my bachelor's in computer engineering from Pune Institute of Computer Technology in Pune, which is also where I grew up in Pune. And
Okay.
after that, I worked for a year as a software engineer at a Japanese firm, following which I got my master's in computer science from Cornell University. And yeah, it's been great. I really enjoy the work that I do and I had a really good time at PICT. I was also part of the PICT editorial board for
Okay.
PICT's IEEE group. So it's really nice to be on the other side of the panel now, and I feel like life comes full circle. So yeah, happy to talk.
It it's really nice to know that you were part of PICT IEEE as well. Moving on to the next question. I think one of the biggest highlights of your profile is that you've pursued an MS in computer science at Cornell University. I think that's a huge achievement in itself. When did you decide that you wanted to pursue a master's degree in the first place?
So I think my first exposure to what education in the US might look like actually happened in my first year of college in PICT. So in the second semester, PICT had organized a US educational tour. So
Oh,
we actually flew from we flew to San Francisco, San Jose, Boston, and New York. It was a 10-day tour that PICT organized, and we met alumni in every city. We went to the Google headquarters. We went to Harvard and MIT, and yeah, it was a great learning experience because it showed me what it might look like to study in these universities and also work in such great places. You know, seeing Silicon Valley and seeing so many of our alumni in the area and doing so well, right from the first few batches of ICT, all very well settled over there and really they've created such a big impact in the tech space. Seeing that really inspired me and made me think that, I also want this. I want to study over here, get that kind of holistic learning experience. And I decided that I would also love to work here. So I think the seed actually started in my first year of college in PICT. And then as it goes, you go with your general undergrad experience, you keep going with your years and learning new things. And yeah, I think it just goes, you go according with the plan and it snowballs into that. But yeah, that's where it started.
yeah, definitely. That's very interesting to know. So, about our next question, when it comes to getting an admission into premier US universities like Cornell, there's a journey towards getting accepted to preparing your profile in a certain way. If you just had to describe these checkpoints in getting your profile ready, what would these checkpoints be? We'll of course take a deep dive into each of these, sequentially. But if you just
Mhm,
had to put it in a few words, what
mhm.
would those checkpoints be?
So, I mean, I think first is something which draws you to it, right? So, the first thing that I mentioned that drew me to it was, of course, visiting the US and seeing this environment and feeling inspired to study in such universities. So, I think that is the first milestone. Second would be your first big project or first internship that you try. So, whether it's a research internship or whether it's even a project in one of your database classes or something like that. If even if it's just a class which you even if it's a project that you just do in one of your classes, something that pushes you to, okay, I do enjoy computer science and it would be interesting to learn more about it. So, and it's also a project that you feel very proud of and that you can speak about. So that is, I think, the second milestone. And then the third one would be that once you've studied a few subjects, if you have an idea about the different fields of computer science, the third would be to sort of start researching what kind of things are happening at different US universities and which university is something that's
Yeah.
intriguing to you.
True.
Then I think after that would be, of course, preparing for all these exams that you have to give to prepare your application. So you'll have the GRE exam, the TOEFL exam, and many students will also like take coaching classes or something for it. So I would say the next milestone would be preparing for these exams, actually taking them. And after that comes, by that time, hopefully you've also done more classes, you've done more projects, and you have many more things that you can speak about
Yeah.
in your application. So then the final milestone of preparing your application comes. But these are the sort of the steps I would say that reach it, that you take to reach it.
Right. So a big part of what you said was projects and internships, and you yourself have had quite a selection of those. Can you tell us briefly about the kind of internships that you pursued, and whether there's an inclination towards accepting students with a certain kind of internships in premier US universities?
Right. So I think my first internship was actually again at PICT. It was a
Mhm.
research internship over the summer. And this was, I mean, they were mainly projects that you do with professors,
Mhm.
and they were called like research projects or research internships.
Yeah.
So this was, over 2 weeks that I did it with Dr. Sonavane in the computer science department. So I kind of just wanted to I had got this advice from a lot of my mentors that you just need to get started. Like it doesn't matter which is the perfect field to get started in, whether it is machine learning or whether it is databases. You just need to have that first project that you do, which, just to get you started. It's good to dabble in different fields.
Mhm.
So I did that. And then I had another internship opportunity because of Ping again. So PICT's IEEE newsletter group that I was a part of. We had interviewed Mr. Aditya Phatak from PNDX for one of our issues.
Okay.
And I stayed in touch with Sir after the interview as well. And then I requested him, I said that, I'm really interested in learning more about the field of bioinformatics. I had no prior experience in it. I said that, my just from what I learned from his interview was that it's good to get started anywhere. So I said, would I get started over here? And I asked him if he would be, if they had any interesting project that I could work on. And he was happy to oblige. He said that, even if it's just an hour of his time that he would um, speak with me during the week, he would give me some ideas for which courses to take on Coursera or just what's an interesting project that I could try out or some like interesting bioinformatics data that I could get. So it was I would say it was actually very informal. So my PICT internship was still a little formal because it was, of course, with the college and I
Professor.
would
Yeah.
get with the professor. But this other internship, of course, both of them were unpaid. So I think it's okay to do internships where you're learning something. And if it's helping you in your early student days, it doesn't matter if it's paid or unpaid. But it as long as it's giving you some learning experiences and it's giving you some interesting projects to speak about later in your interview or your profile. So yeah, that internship was with PDNDX Pune, and it went pretty well. And they were happy to also sponsor my BE project for the final year. So again, they
Okay.
had a statement, and I had two other students with me, my classmates, and we pursued that project. So yeah, I would say it really comes step by step. The most important part that I've learned is that it's important to just put yourself out there and look for opportunities, because there are definitely opportunities out there. And I would say network, and like I said, I stayed in touch with somebody who I interviewed for my college magazine, and they were happy to mentor college students. It's also like right place at the right time. But it's important to reach out to people and, request that opportunity. It won't just um, come your way if you don't ask. And regarding the second part of your question of whether they are looking for certain kind of internships, um, I would say so. If you're pursuing a very research heavy program, like usually Master of Science in Computer Science in various universities, they have a thesis in them and they are very research focused. So maybe such programs be looking for somebody who's done some research internships and published papers. Um, they have that kind of experience with professors. The program that I did was a Master of Engineering in Computer Science. So it is tailored towards a more professional experience. Like the idea is complete your master's in 1 year and then you enter the industry again. So maybe for the kind of program that I applied to, a research heavy internship wasn't totally necessary. As long as I had projects which were kind of in the industry. So I think that was interesting to them because yeah, they saw that I have worked in, a corporate environment and I have experience working with teammates. I've seen the kind of real world problems that we face sometimes and I've tried to solve them. So yeah, it really depends on what kind of master's program you're applying to. And you can, yeah, choose to do the kind of internship that you want according to the master's program that you want. But emphasize again that just get started with something. Try some project out, speak to a professor. I would say that's the most important thing.
Right. So I think it'll be sensible to say that, look at the kind of program you want to get into, understand whether it's more focused towards research or whether it's more focused towards an application driven environment. And then you can probably decide. But, anyways, getting started is the first step. Also, I think networking is one of the points that so many MS students have spoken about in my interviews. Networking is like the crux of getting opportunities.
It really is. Yeah, yeah, it really is.
So another thing that I found interesting on your profile is the IBM Global Mentoring Program. What was your experience of that, and what do you think that gives to a student?
Mhm. So, the IBM Global Remote Mentoring Program was started during the COVID time, I think, or at least that's when we first heard about it
Okay.
in my
Uh-huh.
class. I think again they had contacted like different colleges. It also reached us in PICT, and we got a circular on one of our class groups that they have this opportunity, and they'll conduct a small interview to see if there's a fit check for a project. But then they'll be happy to mentor us over a span of around 2 months, and we'll just get to work on something interesting. So
Right.
this was not something I was going to get any credit for in my classes or get
Mhm.
any kind of stipend for. It was
Yeah.
purely for the joy of just learning something new and, getting mentored by someone at IBM. So that was also a great experience. I worked with around a group of, I think, seven, yeah, a team of seven. And we used IBM Watson, which was a chatbot that they had back then.
Mhm.
And we tried to build like a citizens context aware assistant. So what
Okay.
it was supposed to do was that we also, connected it with an interactive voice response system. So you could call this assistant and then ask it certain questions and it would try and answer them for you. So I would say it was a very early chatbot. Now we have LLMs right now, but this was like back when LLMs were not quite the rage. We were, yeah, you could just ask it a bunch of questions and it would give you those answers. So we had to build this entire system together. And of course, the mentors at IBM were happy to help us with it. So yeah, it was a great experience. It's actually one of the projects that I spoke about in subsequent interviews in my campus placements, and they all found it interesting. So yeah, it was a great opportunity by IBM, and it was just because they wanted to mentor college students.
It's interesting to hear how many opportunities are actually available out there if you're looking for them. That people at IBM would be interested in mentoring college students. It's a hell of an opportunity actually
I
to know
agree.
that you can get that kind of exposure and that you can work in the same environment where those people are working.
Exactly. No, absolutely. And they're also people who you stay in touch with, right? Because it turns out I think they weren't much older than us. They had probably done their post grad, and it was a very like warm environment. They were happy to help us. They were like, even we were college students at one point. Yeah, we understand what you're saying, but do this, do that. So it wasn't a very strict environment. They were happy to help. We've of course connected on LinkedIn and stayed in touch. So I have confidence that even if we were to go back and, request some time to talk with them, it would be a connection that would last. So yeah, the opportunities are there and you can build. This is how you build. This is what it means to network, network in a meaningful way. Yeah.
Yeah,
Mhm.
that's very interesting to hear. I think that's very meaningful for our audience as well because this is something that's not that widely spoken of because I think many people focus on let me check mark all those tech boxes. What technologies do I need to learn? Whereas this is something that sometimes gets left out. Uh,
Yeah.
moving on to our next question. You also worked in Japan for 1 year before starting your MS at Cornell. What was that experience like? Is Japan intimidating because they have such a strict work ethic?
Yeah, so actually, this opportunity was just after COVID, and that's why I couldn't
Hmm.
work in Tokyo, but I worked
Okay.
remotely from
Hmm.
Pune. Yeah, it was supposed to be in Tokyo, but Japan has very strict like border rules at that time. Like they
Yeah.
had closed their borders and they weren't letting anybody in with good reason. The pandemic was a very scary time. But yeah,
Yes.
I did work with the in the Japanese work culture, and all my like my managers were Japanese. My I had a few Indian colleagues, but a lot of my colleagues were also Japanese. So it's a very different work ethic, work culture, like you said. Like it's pretty strict, and you have to understand what they're saying without them directly saying it. So
Okay.
they will never say that, no, you cannot, this is a bad idea, don't do this on a project. They will say it seems difficult. It would, they're a very soft spoken sort of environment. So you have to understand what the context is and what they're trying to say
Hmm.
between the lines. But and I mean another big part is that they don't all speak English. So I mean,
Okay.
imagine explaining to your boss what you've done throughout the week, but not explaining it in English. So I would actually sit and write a little speech in Japanese with some
Oh
English
my
words,
God.
and then explain to them that this is what we did. Of course, they also sponsored Japanese lessons for us, and they did us to learn Japanese. So it was a work in progress. I learned a little bit, enough to get by. But yeah, it was very very interesting to try and experience that. And I think my goal was to just try and get all kinds of different experiences. Like this is also something, right? You learn, oh, that different work cultures have different ways of going about projects.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah, but one thing that's very like interesting about the work culture is that they have this thing of always improving. Like they every project we would have this sort of reflection of, okay, what worked for us, what was a problem, and what was something that we need to do better at. So this kind of reflection, I think it's great for anything you do in life because it's good to
That's
take a moment to, look back.
Yeah, I think there's some one very popular Japanese word for that, but it doesn't strike me at the moment.
Is it Kaizen? Continuously improve.
Yeah, yeah, yep.
Yeah.
I think that's the word. So
So
were you preparing for the GRE while working with your Japan company, or was it before you started working?
yes. So what I had done was, when I was a student itself, I had heard that it's good to give your GRE earlier, like in your third or fourth year itself, because the score
Hmm.
remains valid for I think 3 years, right?
Yeah,
5 years.
I
Five
think
years.
it's movies.
5, yeah. So that's why I had considered giving my GRE earlier as well. That's why I had joined like a coaching class and I did my GRE. So
Hmm.
I started that prep work, but I didn't because of, I mean, again, COVID happened and everything. So I didn't actually schedule my GRE exam when I was a student. What I did was once I started working at the company and I thought that okay, now do have some free time after work.
Hmm.
I prepared consciously for 2 months and then I gave the GRE. But I did start the prep a little bit earlier with my classes were already done. It's just the
Hmm.
self-study that I did once I was working.
And did you have a specific strategy to study for the GRE that you applied?
I think one strategy that I remember was that I'm sure you've heard this from many people who apply for GRE that the words, the vocabulary that you need to
Yeah,
get
the
through,
word
that is
list.
yeah, the word list. Because maths we're already pretty strong at because
Yeah.
our that's I'm sure you also know like quant is
Of course,
something that
in India, you have so many math exams. You have this
yeah,
scholarship and that scholarship, and you have the JEE and CET. So you're pretty much
exactly.
done with it.
Done with math, exactly. So I think quant is something that nobody needs like our advice on. But verbal, I would say, yeah, the vocabulary. I had this app on my phone which had all the vocabulary. So even when I'm like say commuting in a rickshaw, I'm just going through a few words. Like I had decided how many new words I was going to study per day, and then
Mhm.
I would keep adding to that. Then I would also before sleeping at night, maybe I would just revise the words that I had seen. That okay, do I still remember them? It's just an incremental approach, and that's the only way to go about it. Like, you
Right.
just have to
And did you have
yeah.
Yeah, go ahead.
No, no, yeah, you just have to do, like, a little bit every day is what I was saying. Yeah.
Okay. And did you have any strategy for the essay writing part?
Essay writing part, yes. I think I had given a few online like practice essay tests that you have. So that definitely helps giving it in that controlled environment. So I would say most of us would be able to write an essay if we had unlimited time, right? If
Yeah.
we had unlimited time, we can embellish it with all facts and look up things. The crucial part is writing something that is to the point and writing it in that given time frame that you have. Um, so I really practiced that timed effort. So I had seen a few essay prompts online, and I would like write it in my own notepad. And then I also had some like teachers from the coaching class who were happy to review my essays for me. So yeah, I would definitely say timed practice is very important for the essays.
I think that's an important part of GRE because there's a part of it that we already know and a part of it that's new to us, and then putting it together within the time frame is the actual challenge.
Exactly.
Uh, let's talk about your application process. So I
hmm
think the application process at US universities is very challenging as compared to in India where you give a test, you have a score, and then based on your score, you'll get, shortlisted somewhere.
hmm
But in the US, there are many parts of the application. So, what do you think are some of the most important parts of an application to a US university?
hmm
And did you also strategize that? Because you probably made more than one application to
hmm
like multiple universities. So, how did you strategize that? Did you have to tailor every different application differently? Can you tell us about that process?
Yes, yes. So I think one thing about US universities, like you said, is that of course you have to write that big essay which will reflect your writing skills and will show them that you're able to communicate and get your point across even in a written form. So
Yeah.
that needs to reflect um your way of thinking. That's one important
Mm.
thing. So it be something you really think about and work over a period of time and write. That's one important part. Secondly, yes, I did tailor my SOP according to the different universities that I was applying to, but the basic
Okay.
template I kept it the same. So the parts that used to change were the parts where I'm speaking about which professor I would like to work at that university. So say you pick two professors that you want to work with at Cornell. You go through their profiles, their projects,
Yeah.
and you decide who are the most interesting ones to you. And you have one paragraph in your SOP that is kind of speaking about what you want to do specifically at the university, and there you insert this thing that you are interested in working
Right.
at the university with these professors. So I would say that's just how they differed. And of course, even if there's, say, I mean, Cornell has this bird app called the Merlin app, which
Okay.
helps to identify like birds. And this is something that I'm very interested in, like birding and bird watching. So I had heard about the app much before. And that's why when I was typing my application to Cornell, I was like, I have to mention that I have come across like the applications that Cornell builds even in my life before I even decided to apply at Cornell. So that's something I inserted. So I think it's important for it to have a personal touch, like something that connects you with the place that you're applying to, because it makes you more personable and it makes you not just another like application that they've received.
Right. And Cornell is a very, very competitive university. Getting an admission there is extremely rare. Do you think you could identify an X factor why you got in?
hmm Uh, I mean, I wouldn't know a direct answer to that, to be honest. I would say I think I spoke about my projects were in very different fields, and I mean, I had the Japan work experience, and that was in completely like in the like reuse resell business, and then my internship experience was in bioinformatics. So it was very like, I guess they could see that there was a diversity to the kind of projects that I had tried with. And I had, like I mentioned, I also wrote about the specific professors that I was interested in working with. So maybe that's what stood out. Like somebody, I think they want somebody who's thorough and who's done their background research and has written about exactly what they hope to achieve through this master's program, through by getting this opportunity, what is the kind of impact you're trying to make. So they need to see some like drive, and maybe that's what they saw reflected in my essay.
Yeah, that's also something that I've read about, that they're interested in not why you want to get in here, but also what are you gonna do by getting the education here?
Exactly, exactly. That's an important point that I would advise not to miss, because it's not just about studying for 2 years in your master's degree or 1 year in your master's degree. What do you do with that? That is something that they are interested in seeing.
I know this wasn't in my list of questions, but if you don't mind,
Yeah,
which
yeah.
universities did you apply to and how did you select those universities specifically?
So, yeah, I had applied to the University of Southern California, to CMU, to UC Irvine, and to Cornell. I think, yeah, I had only applied to 4 or 5 universities. So my idea was that I um wanted to go to like a university which has a good like research background and has some great professors and has like good programs. Otherwise, I was going to continue working for a bit. So I had decided that I mean my job was going pretty well. I was actually going to I had the option of either moving to Japan or coming to the US for this
Okay.
master's program. So I
Mhm.
had to it had to really be something like I had to get into a great university for me to leave a good job, which is why I
That's true.
um restricted myself to some programs that I was very interested in. So CMU has some great programs in the language technology space, also even the computer science space, and USC as well. And we also have a lot of PICT alumni in USC. So I knew that that would also be great for networking. UC Irvine also has like a great master's in computer science program. So I had, yeah, done my research a little bit about on which, like even places I would be happy to go to, like California or New York, and CMU is of course in Pittsburgh. So I had kind of checked up on the areas that I would be interested in going in, and that's how I decided.
Right. And how was your experience of studying at Cornell University? How is it different from studying in India? What do you think an MS program brings? I mean, what makes Cornell Cornell? I think that's what I want to ask.
Yeah, I think the main thing that makes Cornell Cornell is that the motto of the university actually is any person, any study. So it's a very interdisciplinary approach to any field of study that you're pursuing. So even though you may be pursuing a Master of Engineering in computer science, you could be working on a project in the vet school or in the agricultural department or in the legal information institute, which is very important for computer science majors, because it's not just about like going deep in tech, but also learning where can you apply this tech and what kind of
Yeah.
problems can you solve. So
Hmm?
even like in terms of the courses that you can take in your master's program. So for the MEng in computer science specifically, we had a 15 core requirement, 15 credit requirement for like just CS credits. But then the rest of the 15 credits could be within the business school, they could be within the
Okay.
electrical engineering department, they could be in any of the different approved
Mhm.
courses that they had, which they felt were useful to a CS student. So, like many CS students will go on to build their own startups. So, it's important that they have an idea of how startups are built, which is why some entrepreneurship classes in the business school were also allowed for us to take. So, yeah, Cornell has so many different schools and they're all pioneers in whatever they're doing. So, I think the
That's true.
main thing that makes Cornell unique is that they allow you to take these different courses in different colleges, and they encourage you, in fact, not just allow you, actually they encourage you to take kind of view life in an interdisciplinary way.
That's interesting to hear. Because I think computer science in itself is, I mean, it's an isolated environment, but where you apply computer science and how you apply it is what brings out the
Mhm.
best of it.
Absolutely. I agree with you.
Moving on to our next question. I know that a lot of students who go to pursue an MS in the US, they take up many teaching assistant jobs within the university that they're studying in. What do you think that gives a student? How is that learning experience for you? And how does it serve, a purpose in the university?
Mhm. So I think, I mean, many students, many international students, of course, take up like teaching assistant jobs to, cover the high cost of like living that it
Yeah,
from when you're coming from India and you're coming to the US. Of course, it's nice to have an additional income, which at least helps you
of
cover your
course.
living expenses, right? So
That's
many
true.
students, yeah, will take up all
Because
for, yeah, go on.
because you convert the dollar to the rupee and then
Exactly. Everything is divided by 83, or is it 84 today? Yeah. So of
I think
course,
it might be 84 now.
that might be 84. So of course that's what like most students that's why they start looking for teaching assistant jobs. But I think one main important thing that it teaches you is just how to multitask. So not only are you doing your own studies and taking care of yourself, I mean most everybody's living away from family. So
Yeah.
taking care of yourself, cooking, um managing your everyday commute and everything, while also doing a job which has, let's say, maybe a 10 or 20-hour requirement. So that's, I mean, it's always a choice to do it, but I definitely think it teaches you multitasking in a very important way. And it also covers your living expenses. It helps you build a good relationship with the professor that you are a teaching assistant for. Maybe they might, write a recommendation for you later on for some job,
Yeah.
or LinkedIn, they might endorse you for something. So it definitely helps, yeah, and you also get in touch with students, so it's nice.
So you're working as a data engineer now, and previously you worked in the AI and NLP spaces. What do you think are some of the technologies or some concepts that students should really master if they want to work in these spaces? Because I think AI and NLP is it's a very credible field and it's also very hyped up. So many students will have these really common projects on their resume, and that makes them very you know that doesn't make them stand out in any way. So, what do you think are some, core elements of being a good AI engineer or NLP engineer that you think are absolute essentials?
So you're right in what you said about AI and ML is all the hype right now. We're making more advances than we ever imagined. Like even my AI professor at Cornell, who said that the kind of leaps we've made with LLMs and with AI right now is something he never imagined we would see, like he would see in his lifetime. So we've definitely made a lot of leaps and bounds, and it's very interesting to see where we go next. But I think I would suggest that students always try to find some kind of social impact to the projects they're doing. So, like you said, when everybody knows what the best ML algorithms are and how to implement them, the
Yeah.
how to differentiate a student will come down to how are they able to apply this, and if there's a unique application for the same algorithm that everybody knows. And that's also a good way of thinking, I think, because like we've said, we've repeated this in the previous questions, but it's all about what you do with the technologies that you have
Right.
learned. So, and then speaking of which, like specific technologies that that someone might want to learn to work as a data or an NLP engineer, I would say, like be familiar with AWS, be familiar with Microsoft Azure, know how to deploy applications. So many times, like students may be very involved in just building a data set, training a model, observing all of that. And while that is very important, that is the crux of the application. But I think it's also nice if you know how to deploy your own code online, or like, maybe Dockerizing it first and then deploying it on AWS, Azure, or even Heroku. There are so many platforms that you can deploy it on, because that demonstrates that not only are you able to build something that is unique, but you're also able to make it available to multiple people, like for them to see also. It's not just something that exists on your laptop, it's something that you can share with others. So yeah, I feel like students, I mean, I'm sure they're doing a great job in, learning and doing projects, and internships will already teach you a lot of things. Like I don't think there's anything else like specifically new that I can add other than just the importance of learning how to use Docker, learning how to use AWS, because these are things that you will have to use once you're working in a full-time job.
And also, I think what you're trying to say is it's not only important to build it, it's also important to be able to demonstrate it as per the industry standards.
Mhm, mhm, exactly. That will give you that extra edge.
Right. What I've heard from many students in the past, few months is that the US job market is also pretty tough. How did you navigate the tough job market, and what do you think is something the students should do to not be intimidated by, how tough it is?
Oh yes, absolutely. I think my first thing would be to tell any student who is in this tough job market, or is may enter a job market that becomes tough at some point in
Yeah.
time, is that you are not alone. If you are applying to a lot of jobs and not getting that lead, there are many others who are also in the same space. So don't be too hard on yourself. Like, be kind to yourself and acknowledge that you do have a good application. You are capable of that job, and you're just trying. Like, you just have to keep, don't lose hope and keep being in that process. Keep hustling. I remember I had applied to 300 or 350 jobs within a span of like a few months, and I was tracking it on
Yeah.
a Google spreadsheet. And you're right, it was a very tough job market, but I mean, all my friends who graduated from in that batch, now they have jobs. Of course, it came with a few months of struggle for many students, but eventually everybody did find their footing, did find their place, and they're doing all right now. So there is space in the market for good engineers. And you just have to, keep hustling and not lose hope. Don't keep trying. And was there another part of your question that you said, that how do you prepare yourself? Yeah, I would
Yeah.
say, yeah, I would say, I mean, the generic advice is that, do your lead code, do your coding questions with all your algorithms. I feel like that is a given. Like, everything I'm saying is on top of that. It's a given that you are, your core data structures and algorithms is strong. You know how to um study for all of these. But I'm trying to like speak on more of the additional things that, people may tend to forget. I would say you will never be like fully ready for an interview. So just start applying. Even if you think you're not completely ready, just start applying, because even an interview that you don't do well in teaches you something about, oh, these are the things that I
That's
want
true.
to do
Yeah.
better. So you will, yeah, I have given interviews in which I completely did not do well in them. But the interviewer helped me to see that, okay, so, this is how you solve it. And even the interviewers understand that students are, you'll see a kind interviewer who is just trying to help you then. And even if you don't get the second round, at least you learned that one algorithm. You learned how that implementation works in that coding problem. So yeah, I would say not every interview is to get the job. Some are just to practice. So,
That's true.
really.
That's very true. I think one part of it is very similar to what you see in placements in India, that you do have the first DSA coding round, and
Mhm,
then you will have to be very well versed with subjects like DBMS or
mhm,
data structures or
mhm,
operating systems and stuff like that. And then there's an additional part, because what I've heard is that US universities don't really have that placement season or placement schedule. It's up to you to go and apply and approach and knock on as many doors as you can, because
mhm.
it's not going to be set up for you.
Exactly, yeah. There's no specific placement thing as we do have in India and PICT especially.
Yeah.
But yeah, there are no campus placements that happen. Yeah, sometimes companies and recruiters will come on campus to chat with students, and there may be a lead from there, but it's not a formal placement process like we have it in India. So definitely just cold applying and applying for as many jobs as you can is important.
Yeah. One more question that wasn't in my question set, but I think it's important just to clear the air around because there's a confusion that I've known between what data engineering is, what data science is, and what AI is. So
Mhm,
sometimes students tend to confuse the whole thing,
mhm,
and you'd go to an interview for a data engineer role, and you'd go prepare for data science. So what do you think is the difference between these three roles, and specifically for being a data engineer? What would you need to learn, or what would you need to know for an interview for a data engineer role?
mm. So I would say it still really depends on which company you're applying to. So
Hmm?
the startup that I'm working at right now, I do work as a data engineer, but my job also involves some data science roles sometimes.
Right. Okay.
Because I mean, I am working at a startup, so we kind of do everything, right? So right from preparing the data to making the data set to making a service which will transform the data. So I think you must have heard of extract, transform, and load
Yeah.
in
Yeah.
some of your
Yeah.
classes. So I would say data engineering definitely comes at that part of the pipeline where you're extracting data, like, and then you're transforming it in a form that is good for your database. Like, you're deciding how to store it basically. And then you're also writing some APIs to try and load that data for whenever your user needs it and trying to make that efficient. So I would say a data engineer will have to be very well versed with like both structured and unstructured data, because you're going to get some unstructured data and then you're going to have to think of how to put structure around it and how to store it in an efficient way. And data scientists, I would say, they kind of already get the data that data engineers have built, right? And then they are
Yeah.
deciding what machine learning models to apply to it or what to do with that data. So that kind of comes the second part of the pipeline. And if you're working in a startup like me, then you're kind of going to be switching between both roles as and when necessary. But yeah, I think a good data engineer definitely needs to know databases very well, and all kinds of databases. So both relational as well as your MongoDB and all your document
Mhm.
databases.
Coming to my last question, what does a day in the life of a data engineer living in New York look like? And what keeps you going?
So, the first thing I have every morning is at 9 a.m. we have a stand-up meeting where all devs of the company we come together and we discuss the work that we did the previous day or the previous week and what we are
Mhm.
going to do next. We also discuss like any dependencies we may have, and it's just a good communication channel in the morning to get an idea of what everybody's working on. And yeah, if we may need help from anybody else, then that's also something that we are free to ask about. And after that, it really depends on the task, to be honest. Like sometimes I mainly work with text based data. So I
Mhm.
have to sometimes work with like big PDF documents, try to um, extract the text from them and then do some named entity recognition on them, try to decide, like research a few different models that are there and try to decide which one works best for our use case. So yeah, it really depends on the task, but I would say an average day would be working with some text-based data and then trying to derive some insights from it using yeah, different models that are available right now. Or maybe sometimes I have to build a data set for the specific use case that we have and then apply it, then apply a model on it and like fine tune it. So yeah, very varied days, but it almost always involves some text.
This is one more last question, but I'll take it anyways. So basically, I think a lot of students speak about how it's very interesting to work in USA or in New York because there's a lot of innovation going on around you. It's just inspiring to be in that place and to build connections with people who are doing, really innovative things, as opposed to what you see in India, where everyone is doing things that are innovative, but they're pretty much locked up in, their community. Whereas
Mm.
there you'll have this access to not just in the tech space, but probably in the art space,
Same
or
here.
you'll have libraries. So
Mhm.
what do you find about that environment that you think is, inspiring, or is different from what you saw in India?
Hmm. So I think, I mean, maybe the different Indian universities would have different experiences, but for us in PICT, we only saw like electronics and telecommunications, computer science, and IT, right? So I only knew engineers who were from these three backgrounds. It's only when I came here and I met mechanical engineers and I met lawyers and I met students who were pursuing different disciplines that I learned more about their fields. And like I said, that's always very interesting because it's just great to know that you're sharing space with people who are doing such great things in their own field. It definitely widens your perspective, and it's always nice to have friends also across these fields because the kind of friendships and connections you build at this time. I mean, it's only been a year since I graduated, but I'm sure like 10 years down the line, everybody's going to be doing amazing in their fields and we'll still be in touch, we'll still be friends. So it's very cool. I guess that's how, like who knows, somebody might turn out and become a president somewhere, somebody might be like the tech CEO, and somebody might be like this amazing, very famous doctor. So yeah, I would definitely say like being in a university like this gives you that opportunity to form these friendships. You've spent evenings having like game nights with them. We've played Catan with them. You've done all these. And there's also the professional side of them, which you tend to forget when you're playing these games. But yeah, I think it definitely introduces you to like amazingly intelligent people who you can call your friends.
Yeah, that's very interesting to hear. A great big thank you to everyone who has watched this video till the very end. If you think that our content is insightful, please like this video, please share and subscribe our channel. We at IEEE Pune's podcast Beyond Conversations are always striving to bring educational, insightful content to our audience. If you have any suggestions or thoughts, please leave them in the comment section. We're looking forward to bringing a lot more great content and videos and discussions and conversations to you. Thanks a lot.